Now you're saying you want to preserve the bulk of Bill 96 and use the notwithstanding clause to protect it.
I think that those two challenges are the biggest challenges that I see would need a change for now.
But you will keep the clause to protect the rest of the bill?
Well, as I mentioned in French, and it still remains to be seen in English as well, but we're going to have to check what it means in terms of, judiciary procedures. But I am for the main objective of Bill 96, which is to protect French. And I've been talking to a lot of Anglophones and Allophones about that. They're all about protecting and promoting French. I'm being very clear on those two issues that I want to change. And it doesn't mean that if you want to change something on 96 that you're against French. That's the thing that we need to break.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Raphaël Melançon is in studio. Our feature, of course, is brought to you by Guaranteed Industries, reminding you to get ready for spring with a tune-up now. Get it all checked out. Make sure you're ready to go. Give them a call, 514-342-3400 or online, guaranteedindustries.com. So, Raph, the idea about, protecting France, that's a given. Mm-hmm. Why do you think he felt the need to bring up the idea? And he didn't mention it in there, but he's talking about the fact that, the use of the notwithstanding clause would be okay with respect to some elements in Bill 96. He's already said he would not do it for Bill 21. But what do you make of what you heard today?
Well, it's generating so many questions today because it's a major shift for the Liberals compared to their previous stance on the topic of Bill 96 and the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause. What Milliard said today, it's basically that he would maintain Bill 96 as is, except for two major elements which he disagrees with. The first one is he would alleviate the administrative burden for small businesses, and he would give newcomers more time to learn French before they get services cut in another language,
as opposed to 6 months, which is
which is fairly. Let's be honest, it's too short.
Yeah.
It's too short. You can't learn French in 6 months when you arrive in Quebec. So he would renew the notwithstanding clause because, as we know, every 5 years you have to renew the notwithstanding clause in order to maintain it, so that the bill is the law is shielded from any court challenges. So this is a major shift, and here I feel like we see Milliard trying to define his stance because we know that he wants to have a more nationalistic approach to politics. He wants to appeal as well to former CQ voters. He has to reconnect with Francophone voters. As we have seen recently in recent polls, his party is gaining momentum right now, but he still needs to reconnect with Francophone voters if he wants to make gains and get a majority in the next election outside of the Greater Montreal area. So that is what he's doing right now with this new stance on Bill 96, saying we will not let Bill 96 die in courts in the end. But it's generating turmoil already within his own caucus because La Presse is reporting right now that apparently, contrarily to what was said this morning during the press conference, the Liberal caucus was not consulted prior to their leader taking this new stance. And so we have, within the Liberal Party, there are some MNAs from the West Island who are certainly, right now, I'm pretty sure that in their writing and their constituency offices, the phone is probably ringing all the time. What did he say? What did he say? Excuse me, that's not what we voted for. So this is yet again a big risk that's being taken by a Liberal leader on the language issue. Remember what happened at the time with Dominique Anglade on the language issue during when Bill 96 was adopted. So could this be the beginning of a new crisis, internal crisis of the Liberal Party?
But isn't this, talk about ironic, on the same day that you get a poll result showing that the Liberals have now actually passed the PQ, and then this kind of blows up on that same day. So that's going on today for the Liberals.
Jacques Parizeau had an interesting word for that. He said that's called s'auto-pelure de bananiser, throwing banana peels to yourself.
What is it in French?
S'auto-pelure de bananiser. It's one single word, s'auto-pelure de bananiser. So you're throwing banana peels in front of yourself. You're making yourself, trip over something, whereas everything was going quite well for the Liberals so far.
I thought that was throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but that's a completely different thing.
That's another part.
So that's one part of what's going on today provincially. That's kind of a bit of a head scratcher. The other is Eric Duhem, and we know the Conservatives are doing better. Mm-hmm. In fact, in Quebec City, I think they're actually polling ahead in some areas, right ahead of the PQ. And then today he comes out and said he's ready to support the CAQ's proposed constitution. Why?
Well, because Christine Fréchette recently said that she would move forward with the Constitution if she feels like the project gets the approval of other parties in the National Assembly. She doesn't want the CEQ to be the sole party voting in favor of Simon-Jolin Barrette's Constitution project. And so she set the condition that if we have sufficient support from other parties in the National Assembly. And now Duhem has welcomed recently within the ranks of his party Maïté Blanchette-Vizina, the former CEQ minister, who was until recently and is sitting as an independent in the National Assembly. She joined the Conservatives. So now Duhem said, we will vote in favor of the CEQ's project, Constitution project, so that they can move forward with it. He said it's not a perfect constitution, but it's better to have a basis, a constitution we can work with and amend eventually if we get to power, which is quite hypothetical at 14% for the Conservatives. But still, he said we would rather have a constitution that's not perfect than have no constitution at all. That's interesting, and I think it's just a strategy. You know, Duhem is quite strategic, and he's pushing Christine Fréchette here. He's taking her to her word, saying, "Oh, you want support from other parties, then we're going to give you that support, so you have no more excuses to move forward and to go into the next election having to defend that constitution you adopted yourself."
You think I heard Eric Duhem, or part of Eric Duhem, who was on with Elias earlier today.
Yes.
And talking about the fact, about reaching out to Alberta and look what they're going through and complaining about the federal government. I'm like, is he starting to, I forgot the expression was that you'd use, basically, smoking his own whatever, thinking that now with a little bit of support, he's going to bring back all these sort of, farther right conservative ideas? Is he? What's he doing?
I'm trying to grasp where Duhem is going at the moment, and frankly, it's hard for me because just 2 days ago, when Drainville lost the leadership race at the CEQ, he said we are now embodying the nationalist right in Quebec, and we are welcoming Drainville's supporter. And then this morning with Elias on the microphone, he said, "Oh no, we were never backtrack like the Liberals just did on Bill 96. So he's appealing at the same time to Liberal voters, to Anglophones in the West Island, and he's trying at the same time to appeal to nationalists in the rest of the province.
Yeah.
So, he's trying...
He's trying to be everything to everybody. That's not a winning strategy.
And again, I'm going to use a French expression here. We say manger à tous les râteliers. So you would gobble basically everything that's presented to you on the table.
Manger les what?
Manger à tous les râteliers.
The things you learn on this show. Okay.
It's a bilingual segment today.
No, that's good. Again, so we're kind of questioning where he's going with this. I think he's beginning to sense, this power that he's, trying to now, or the polls are showing he's getting a little bit of. He seems to be kind of getting off the track.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're gaining some momentum, try to keep that momentum.
Exactly.
Try to define yourself clearly in the minds of voters, not to go everywhere, to knock at every door and say, "Oh yes," depending on the Tribune you're on, you're saying something, and then the day after you're saying something else depending on the audience you're talking to. That's not the way it works in politics, and in the end you're going to end up having absolutely no people voting for you.
I don't know. It's funny because he's been so contained up until now, and he's gained a lot of support, and then all of a sudden with a bit of support he's now kind of getting off the track and trying to hang a left turn that nobody was looking for. So.
I think he's getting way ahead of himself.
Yeah.
He feels like victory is finally could be in his part a possibility for. Yeah. Well, yes, okay. Absolutely. I think he's floating on a cloud.
Real quick, for Christine Fréchette sworn in yesterday officially as the PM. I asked our listeners today because one of the things she'd said even before being sworn in. She's not Francois Legault. She's a woman. She's a Gen Xer. Did a different approach to government. She said she'd spoken to people in the region. She's been out. She understands what Quebecers are concerned with, the economy, the cost of living. There has been no announcement from her yet. And I said, to be fair, she's only been officially PM for a day.
Yeah.
Let's give her, a couple of minutes. And I asked people what they would like to see her announce. What would be something that the Premier would do that would show she's serious about what she said? And I said the easiest to me, the go, would be, you just had a federal gas tax cut. Go announce a provincial tax cut, because there's a provincial tax even higher than the one from the feds. That'd be pretty easy to do. What do you see happening here?
Well, we've heard that she's looking into it as well at the moment, and I think that she has to mark the minds of people to show that this is a new administration, that this is she's not pursuing François Legault's legacy.
Right.
So she needs to come up with bold ideas that will really mark the minds of voters, saying, okay, this is not the same administration. This is a new government, and I think this is one of the options. We've heard today as well of her new project for the third link in Quebec City. So no more tunnels in Quebec City. It's going to be on the eastern side of the city instead of the center portion that was until recently the main option from that was from the government at least expected to be, and that they're going to be doing it with a private corporation. So that's something that's interesting to me because it's the same model that we used back when I was working in Ottawa for the Minister of Infrastructure, Denis Lebel. That's the model we adopted to build the new Champlain Bridge here in Montreal, and it worked quite fine. Right. We delivered on time, on budget. So if this is something, if she brings in ideas like this that show that she's in favor of the private sector, she's working with the private sector to deliver major infrastructure, but at a reasonable cost.
Does that say
Quebec
something
taxpayers.
to the individual voter, though? It's a big corporate announcement. But what does it mean for, Madame Monsieur on the street?
It says that she's in solution mode and that she has a vision that's different from the one of François Legault. We're going to have also, the cabinet is going to be sworn in next week. I feel like she might be bringing a lot of new fresh faces to her administration, to her government, so that then again, it imprints the impression in the minds of voters that this is no longer François Legault's government, this is no longer François Legault's party at the helm.
I had someone suggest, more than one, a few people actually, either through text or phone calls, suggesting, what they'd like to see? A premier is going to say, I'm cutting the public service. The premier made the promise that they would, and they didn't. They increased it.
Absolutely.
For her to come out and say, okay, beyond just what I'm going to give you, the taxpayer, we need to start saving some money, right? Let's see what they're going to do. We think that's going to be something she gets to?
I don't feel like she's the one who's going to do that. Drainville would have done that. He was clear about it during his campaign. He wanted to tackle the question of permanencies for public servants. This is something that Fréchette was clearly reluctant to do. So I don't feel like she's going to be the one that will be reducing significantly government expenditures. But and to me, it's going to be interesting to see how she differentiates herself from Charles Milliard as well. Again, today Charles Milliard had to defend himself, saying, I'm not the same as Christine Fréchette, because both of them have similar backgrounds. They both come from the business sector. They both have a soft stance on nationalism, immigration, for instance. So they have some similar ideas, and it's going to be difficult for them to differentiate themselves from each other in a campaign. So she has to come up with ideas that will also make sure that in the minds of voters, this is not a Diet Pepsi version of the Liberal Party.
A what?
A Diet Pepsi version of the Liberal Party.
I don't think I've ever heard that before. A Diet Pepsi version of as opposed to a regular Pepsi
regular
version, or
Pepsi,
a Diet
where
Coke,
either do you prefer the regular Pepsi or Diet Pepsi? So it's basically the same taste but slightly different, So in the end, the CAQ has to remain the CAQ and the Liberals have to remain the Liberals. If the Liberals are shifting towards a more nationalist approach, as we have seen today on Bill 96, then what's the difference between voting Liberal and voting for the CAQ? And that's going to be important for both leaders to make sure that the difference is clear in the minds of voters, because if not, then anything can go. And it's just going to come down to a battle of which leader I prefer, the personality, the likability of leaders, but not necessarily their platform, their program, and their ideas.
So they would both be Diet Pepsi at that point.
Both Diet Pepsi or or let's say Diet Coke and Coke Zero.
Oh, Coke Zero, okay.
Which is, to me, the same thing.
I have no idea what that means. Raphaël Melançon, Raph, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.